Good evening, everyone. It's so great to see all of you here. Looks like we've got a great crowd of people with us for our second town hall meeting. This is a virtual town hall meeting on the topic of returning to school for in-person learning in a hybrid model. I'm Amy Slavinsky, superintendent of the school district, and I'm so happy that you all have joined us. I will ask my cabinet teammates to introduce themselves as they all play a key part in this town hall meeting today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Snyder. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jared Critchfield. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services.
Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine Brown. I'm the Special Education Director and SELPA Director.
Thank you. And Dave is still muted. Demi, can you unmute Dave?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks, Demi. Dave Vicari, Assistant Superintendent, HR. Thanks, Demi.
Wonderful. Thank you. So as Demi is our Zoom host and our wonderful administrative assistant and communications officer here in our office. As she's putting on our agenda on the screen, I'll just take a moment to run through the agenda. Welcome and purpose of the meeting is number 1. Number 2, Board of Trustees decision. Number 3, timeline for transition to in-person learning. Number 4, overview of the hybrid model. Number 5, overview of the distance learning model. Number 6, process for selecting the best option for your student. Number 7, next steps. And we've carved out a big chunk of time, actually the most of the time, for a question and answer session. When we ran through this agenda on Tuesday afternoon earlier this week, we realized that those first few items, 1 through 5, didn't take nearly as long as we thought it was going to take. And so there was plenty of time for question and answer at the end. So as we begin to share some information and you have questions, feel free to jot them down and be ready to ask them when we get to that. So going back up to the top, the purpose of our meeting is to share information with you about planning that has taken place and will continue to return, to have a safe return to our school campuses in a hybrid model. And then to give you an opportunity to ask questions and get more information. So number 2 on the agenda, our Board of Trustees decision. You may have zoomed in to our last Board of Trustees meeting on September 23rd last week. At that meeting, they made a decision to safely return students to our school campuses, beginning with Monday, October 19th, with small learning cohorts of students who have the greatest needs. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. And then beginning on Monday, November 19th, having all of our TK, transitional kindergarten through 12th grade students, be welcomed back to campus for hybrid learning for those families who choose that. There will continue to be the option for distance learning for those families who opt to stay in distance learning. So the hybrid model starting on November 19th will be, or excuse me, November 16th, will be the default, and families will have the opportunity to opt into distance learning if they want to choose that. So that was the Board of Trustees decision, and basically that is the timeline. So once again, Monday, October 19th, for small learning cohorts immediately following our fall break, for small learning cohorts of students who are at greatest need. And our school sites, our teachers and our principals are already working together to identify who those students are, and we'll be communicating soon with families. Some of the categories for those student groups include our English learners, students with disabilities, foster youth, students who are performing far below grade level, perhaps students who have been chronically absent, either before distance learning or during distance learning. And also perhaps students who are having some significant mental health or social emotional issues. We want to start bringing those children to campuses for some small group or even one-on-one support for them. So timeline-wise, that will begin Monday, October 19th. And again, for all families who choose it for their children, Monday, November 16th for the hybrid beginning for TK through 12th grade. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sean Snyder, who's going to go into a little bit more detail and share with us about the hybrid model.
Yes, thank you for that. And I'll just make a couple other quick comments around the October 9th groups of students, the most at risk. You know, this is following state guidance that was issued earlier in September. And 2 distinctions of those groups of students is, first and foremost, that will be in addition to distance learning. So their current distance learning program will continue even if they're selected for that. And families will be contacted if your student is one of those who's being considered, and that will be by appointment, and all those details will be worked out. So if you haven't heard anything yet, it doesn't mean you won't, but you know, you will be contacted by the school if your student is in the group to come back for some, you know, a little bit of support on October 19th. So what we are going to do is I'll provide just a general overview of the hybrid model for both elementary and secondary, and then the distance learning model for elementary and secondary, again, with the goal of kind of getting through our portion of the presentation in order to get to the question and answer session, which really has been the most valuable part to these town halls, or the other town hall that we had so far. So for elementary, what a hybrid model is it means because our classrooms aren't large enough to have all students in them and maintain 6 feet of distance. And that's what we have to do based on the guidance from California Department of Public Health. So we know that our current classroom spaces don't allow that. We have to have some of our students in school some of the time and the other half of the students in school the other part of the time. So the way that looks at elementary is students coming 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, either in a morning cohort or an afternoon cohort. So a student may come Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for a few hours in the morning or in the afternoon. We're looking at around 2.5 hours or so of instructional time. So here's a sample draft elementary schedule that would call for school starting at 8 o'clock and ending around, actually we're looking at a little bit more compressed than this. We're thinking about 2.5 hours now. So 8 to 10:30 would be about the time, or 7:45 to 10:15, something like that. And then an afternoon cohort might be like 11:30 until 2 o'clock or somewhere in that time frame. Each individual school schedule might vary by 15 or 30 minutes. And so that exact schedule will be communicated to families as we get closer to November 16th. And so really the elementary model is students, half the students come in the morning, half in the afternoon for around 2.5 hours. The secondary hybrid model, and I'll give Demi a minute to pull up that, is 2 full days of instruction per week. And there were kind of the thought process and reasoning behind half days versus full days. Our youngest students at the elementary level, people really felt like the more regular contact with them, especially 5, 6, 7-year-olds, having 4 days a week, even though it's only 2.5 hours a day, would be better for our younger students to support their needs. And then the high school students, when you're talking some of the courses like science classes that have labs and things like that, having a full day where you can have a regular like 73-minute period was preferable to having shorter, really compressed periods at the secondary level. So the secondary hybrid model would be students coming to school 2 days a week for full days, and one of the days they would go to their A-day classes. One of the days they would go to their B-day classes. And if they opt for the hybrid model, their schedule would stay the same, and they would continue on for the in-person. And then the 3 days that they're not attending in person, they would have asynchronous assignments. That just means that students will complete assignments at home that are assigned on the 2 days when they're there in person. So that's a really general, broad overview, but hopefully that starts to give families some ideas of a schedule. Like if you're thinking, well, childcare wise, okay, I know my secondary, my 7th, 8th grade student is going to be at school 2 days, and they'll be home 3 days. So now I can start thinking about that. Or elementary, if I go for the hybrid, I know it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, either morning or afternoon. So that should help with some planning and give a general idea. We will try to keep students from the same family in the same track for elementary. Obviously, that's a challenge if you have a high school student and an elementary, because there's 4 half days versus 2 full days. But we will do whatever we can to work with families to make sure that schedules are as convenient as possible for you, and your students are attending during the same cohorts when at all possible. Let me see, I think that's a pretty good overview of the hybrid model. And again, we'll take questions and answers on this when we get there. Now let's talk about the distance learning model. So all students will be assigned to the hybrid model as the default. So that's what we're, that's kind of the default instructional model. There will be an opportunity though for families who still feel like they'd like their child to continue with distance learning to enroll in that option through a sign-up form that will come home to you actually next week. So hybrid's the default. If you're thinking hybrid model is what you want for your child, there will be nothing more you need to do at this time other than continue to learn about what it will look like. Your school will communicate information to you closer to November 16th about, here's the cohort you're in. This is, just more details about that. Here's our final bell schedule. All that will come from school sites as we get closer to November 16th. But if you're thinking hybrid in person, you don't need to do anything further. Distance learning we'll talk about now, and there will be an enrollment form next week for that. So distance learning at the elementary level will be much like it is right now, very similar to the way it is. Students are required to have the live daily interaction with the teacher and the peers. And so we plan to model at the elementary level just very close to what they're receiving now. One of the realities of, well, really one of the realities for both options is the chance that students may need to be assigned a different teacher. The reality of reopening schools in a pandemic and offering two instructional models is that we have to look at our current staffing, and we have this X number of teachers at the elementary level, and now we have to figure out how to offer two instructional models with that same number of teachers. So, you know, once we get the enrollment back from families, we know who wants distance learning, and we also have teachers who will only be able to do distance learning. We can kind of match those two things up. And so you can understand why students may need to change their teacher, either if they're planning for hybrid and their teacher will be doing distance learning, or if they want distance learning and their teacher is going to be doing hybrid. So there may be some teacher changes, and we'll know all of that after next week once people have enrolled in the distance learning option and sort those things out. So that's really what the distance learning will look like at elementary. I'm just kind of thinking of some of the questions on Tuesday. It likely will be, in order to avoid combination classes, or for example, some of our smaller schools, let's say Plymouth Elementary had 4 first graders who distance learning. We wouldn't have a teacher for 4 first graders at Plymouth Elementary providing that, but maybe there's 4 at Plymouth and there's 10 at Sutter Creek and a couple more here. We would probably combine first graders into a distance learning class from multiple schools in order to be efficient. That would accomplish not having combination classes, and it also obviously helps us, you know, to be efficient with our staffing. You know, someone asked on Tuesday about a small school, the possibility of having a 3 grade level combination. No, we're planning to be efficient and to try to combine light grade levels from multiple schools if we need to prevent that from happening. So elementary distance learning model, that is the overview. It gets a little more complicated at secondary because of especially high school with credits being involved and multiple subject teachers versus single subject credentialed teachers and the requirements with that. And so our platform for secondary distance learning will be Edgenuity. And I learned after Tuesday's town hall that not everybody knows what Edgenuity is. And, you know, because we talk about it every day, sometimes we forget that not everyone knows what we're talking about. So to tell us a little bit more about what Edgenuity is and what it looks like and what students can expect, we've asked our principal, Kelly Hunkins, to talk a little bit about it. So Kelly's going to give us a quick overview of Edgenuity at this time. Demi, can you unmute Kelly?
Hello, hi Sean and everybody else. Thanks for the opportunity to share about the Edgenuity online learning platform with you. All of our secondary schools currently use Edgenuity as an online learning platform, mostly for credit recovery. Our summer school is run through this platform. So Edgenuity is a California standards-based, evidence-aligned platform that provides explicit instruction for students through videos with credentialed teachers. The online learning platform would have a teacher that would be assigned to that student, but may not have the same credential as that course. But because of the Edgenuity platform and the teacher teaching it online, that's where they would get that content area specialist. Students are required to engage with work that includes assignments, tests, quizzes, exams, and when appropriate, written assignments, and it's all turned in through Edgenuity. And sometimes the teacher who is guiding that instruction as a in-person, or not in-person, but they're overseeing that instruction, would then correct those assignments. I don't know what else you would want me to say about it, but if people have questions about Edgenuity, I would be more than happy to answer them.
I think, yeah, if you're going to be able to stick around to the end, maybe we can accommodate it then. I'll just one other quick thing. We mentioned that we use it primarily for credit recovery now, but all of the CP, they also have CP level courses and even some AP courses. And all of the CP courses are A through G approved so that, you know, the transition to those would be seamless for students as well.
Correct. Thank you, Sean. I forgot to add that.
Yeah. And so one of the challenges, though, to be completely upfront and transparent, is that Edgenuity does not have the same course offerings that we offer on a comprehensive high school master schedule. You know, some of those examples is that there is not an AP Euro course offering through Edgenuity, or AP Gov, AP Stats. PE can be a challenge with Teacher of Record through Edgenuity, culinary, digital photo, some of those courses that students are taking, you know, at the comprehensive school, there's just not a good Edgenuity match. And so a harsh reality for some families considering distance learning at the high school level is that there may be some tough decisions that need to be made about what options students have for those courses, because they're just not available through that program. So we just want to make sure that that's, you know, out there and upfront for families. And it's a reality again of reopening schools during a pandemic with two different instructional models, and our ability to do that, you know, with both of those models. So that really is a pretty good overview of the distance learning model. Other than using Edgenuity and having more limited courses, it will look, you know, the daily schedule would look the same for students as it is now, where they log in for daily live interaction with the peers and with the teacher, and then the teacher supports them throughout the day, or, you know, however it's structured, to complete the online Edgenuity course content and checking in with students and things like that. So it's not just students on their own doing online coursework, it's check-ins with the teacher and monitoring of that. And like Kelly said, proctoring exams, quizzes, assignments, and whatnot. So that is an overview of distance learning model for secondary, which takes us to number 6 and on the agenda, and that is really the process for selecting the best option for your student. And so, as we said just a few minutes ago, distance learning, or I'm sorry, hybrid model of in-person is the default for all students. Next week, each school site will be sending out a process for enrolling in distance learning, if that's what the family is leaning towards. And at the high school level, along with the distance learning enrollment form, will be the list of Edgenuity courses that are available to sign up for. And so, you know, that information will come to you. We're hoping, you know, next Monday, late in the day, possibly even first thing Tuesday morning, but early next week, you can all expect that. And at the elementary level, it'll just be the enrollment form without, you know, it's the same courses there. Really, the Edgenuity course list is specific to high school. So each school will send that out, and we're asking families to make their selection by Friday before we go off on October break. And so that's why we're trying to educate everyone, provide all this information now up front to help inform you to make a decision. And by the end of next week, we hope to have all families' decisions. Again, you know, if distance learning, opting into that, or if you don't do anything, then it's the hybrid model that you'll be assigned to. And then we can really start planning out the staffing and how those course offerings and everything will look based on that information. So that really covers number 7 as well. Next steps, those are the immediate next steps. And so I believe at this time we're ready to take some questions and answers. 20 minutes in, yeah. And again, this is really the bulk of what we want to do, to be able to help you understand and answer any questions you might have. So Demi, are people, how are we doing the questions? Are they raising their hand, or are they sending you something in the chat box?
Yep, I just sent it out to everyone. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we will call on you in order. And if we're going to start now, we'll start with Brenda, and I'll unmute you.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
You know, I tried so many times last time and I just couldn't figure it out.
Well, thanks for being persistent.
So the at-risk are going to go back on 10/19, but they haven't even been contacted yet. So in 10 days, you're going to identify the at-risk, make appointments with them, and get them placed. At the same time, placing the other 4,000 rest of the population.
The rest of the 4,000, yeah, those start November 16th. So the October 19th is a pretty, it's a small group of the most at-risk students. And yes, school sites are they pretty much have identified most of those students. So they will be reaching out to those families. I don't know if it'll start happening tomorrow, but most definitely, next Monday, about who those students are and making arrangements for them to come in for that in-person support.
That just seems, considering how slowly things have been moving, like a really tight time frame.
Yeah, we are feeling that, and we are, believe me, we are working and and doing everything we can, and that's the timeline. And so those families can expect communication from their schools next week.
Okay, and then did we find out the ramifications of taking the secondaries, the high schoolers out mid-semester with their credits and things like that for graduation in college?
That's a great question, Brenda. I think Jared might be able to speak to that better about the grade transfer grade process and how that would work.
Yeah, it's still, Brenda, it's still a work in progress when it comes to the transfer grades, but we are working with Edgenuity, and our counselors and administrators are working hard on solutions on what that will look like for students, but we're working hard to get more specific answers as we get closer.
Okay, and then, but so next, what I got out of the last town hall meeting is that everything is just talking in circles, because you want us to pick what teachers and classes we're going to have before you tell us what teachers and classes are going to be available. So I don't know if I want hybrid, because I don't know what classes are going to be available and what teachers are on that end compared to what teachers are on distance learning.
Is that related to some of the comments from last meeting about parents' decisions being based on what their teacher is going to do, or what? I mean,
based on all the information that we've been given, nobody seems to, and I kind of get, I guess I don't understand. I don't know if the other 80 staff that didn't respond to the survey have been contacted. I don't see anything, or the teachers because they said about 163 teachers replied. I believe you folks said there's about 240 teachers. So that means we're missing 80 opinions. And I didn't see anything from staff, from custodial, from the aides, from anybody besides for teachers.
Sure.
So I'd be happy to jump in here a little bit, Sean, if you want me to. Thanks, Brenda, for asking all those really great questions. We have pushed out quite a bit of information over the last week or two through the InTouch messaging system, email, phone calls, text, lots of attachments to that most recent one that went out from Sean Snyder about a week ago. I think there were 4 attachments in English and 4 attachments in Spanish. And so with all that information, I know it's so easy to miss some of the details. And that's why, one of the reasons why we're having these town hall meetings, so that we can, reiterate answers. So part of the question that I heard you ask was about how are parents going to have the information that they need to make these decisions, or to make this decision to go with the hybrid default or to opt into staying with distance learning. And so just to say again, early next week, either Monday or Tuesday, enrollment forms will go out from the individual schools to all of the families with the opportunity to either stay with the hybrid default or to opt into distance learning. And with that messaging will come a bunch of attachments again. And part of the attachments will include course offerings information, an updated FAQ. We are in the process of collecting and writing down many of the questions that were asked on Tuesday, and more questions that are going to be asked today, and including those in an updated FAQ that will also be attached to this message that goes out early next week. So our goal is to put as much information as we possibly can in the hands of all of our families to prepare them to make that decision by the end of next week. The one piece of information that we won't be able to give you is exactly which teachers are doing what, because in order to make those final staffing decisions, we need the enrollment information from you, from the families, so that we can determine exactly how many students are defaulting to hybrid and exactly how many students are opting to stay in distance learning. Once we have those numbers, then we'll be able to finalize the staffing decisions. And then that information will come following the enrollment process. So it's a kind of a domino effect, step by step.
In the math,
So-
for the in-person hybrid model, the course offerings will be the same as they are now. I mean, it's really more about the Edgenuity options, what are available, and that will come with the distance learning enrollment form.
Right, but the hybrid model could become, could also come with rolling subs, because the teacher that teaches that subject could be a distance teacher, distance learning teacher, right?
There could be some substitutes in a hybrid model that, yes.
There could be
Okay.
some, honestly, we're not anticipating a whole lot of subs because we're currently also working very closely with the Amador County Teachers Association, our labor partners, and everyone recognizes that teachers are essential workers, and we are assertively making this move to come back to our campuses. And I know that we'll be able to count on our teachers to help us with that.
Okay, and there's two more. If a kid takes distance learning and the other group is in hybrid, and if the regulations change and our numbers in the county change and we have to go back to distance learning, now we have two different groups of kids that are doing two different types of distance learning, right?
Well, actually, I can answer that. That's been very confusing. So we don't have to go back to distance learning as a district. If we go back to the purple tier, like once schools launch their school year, after you've been in red for at least 14 days, you're eligible to open for in-person instruction. And once you open for in-person instruction, then you operate off of the guidelines for cohorts. Like if a student tests positive in a classroom, then that classroom may have to shut down and go into quarantine for 14 days, but the rest of the school stays open. And so I know that I just had that clarified maybe 3 weeks ago for me, but really the whole years of going back to distance learning and all that are off the table once you launch your school year.
As it stands now with the rules as they stand now, the rules that change every 30 days.
Yes, that's a good point. You're right. And this is also, as long as we stay where we are until November 16th, like if we were, I mean, we don't really think, well, who knows? I mean, we don't know. But if we were for some reason to go into purple before November 16th, then we would not be eligible anymore based on the state criteria to reopen for hybrid. So we're planning as if we will be, because we went to orange this week, but you're right, things change all the time and we have to be prepared to change at a moment's notice.
So if Amador County's numbers gets bigger on the 19th or the 16th and we can't open on the 16th, then what about the fracture of the kids that pick distance learning? How do we get the group all back together again?
I would think that if we, had it ready to go for November 16th and then we found out we couldn't open in the hybrid model, we would keep things as they are right now. We wouldn't divide, we wouldn't start that new model until we could actually begin in person. So,
Okay, they wouldn't be locked into it, and then, okay. And then lastly, transportation. We got to talking about transportation, and I got what Critchfield, I think, was saying that directly kids that live in Jackson will be walking or riding their bikes to school, and in Sutter Creek, and that made perfectly good sense until you started actually thinking about it. Will the Sutter Creek kids get transportation to Ione? I'm not going to go through every scenario, and I don't expect an answer, but will the Fiddletown kids get transportation to Ione? Those are the kinds of minute questions. And I think it was also Critchfield again that said that it might be, especially because they were talking to a Pioneer parent, that it might be a matter of a group picking up a group of kids at one stop and then dropping them off at the elementary and then going back for another group of kids at another stop.
Yeah, Brenda, I can speak to that. I did say much of what you just mentioned at the last meeting. Yeah, we're not saying that if you live in Sutter Creek and you're a 7th or 8th grader that goes to Ione Junior that we're not going to have a bus for you. It has to do with because of the fewer students that will be allowed on the bus compared to normal, we are having to eliminate some of the in-town routes that are shorter. We're not talking taking Fiddletown kids to Ione Junior High. I mean, we will still have buses set up in that fashion. And the question came up Tuesday. from a parent who lives in Mace Meadows saying, I really don't live that far from Pioneer, but are we expecting my kid to walk there? And absolutely not. I'm not expecting kids to walk Highway 88 to get to school. So yeah, our transportation department is working hard right now on figuring out the routes, and we are going to have all that information for you next week.
Okay. All right, thank you. And you can mute me now, Demi. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
Demi, do you have an order of how you're doing it or who's next?
Yes, and I'm privately messaging them when they're the next speaker, but now we have Sarah.
Before Sarah starts, I just want to say I recognize Amanda Robinson with your hand physically up, and you've been so patient on my Zoom screen. If you just go into the chat and raise your digital hand, Demi will be able to help you with that.
Okay. Sarah. I see Sarah Swift is unmuted. Is that who's next?
Yes. Sarah, are you there?
Sarah? Okay, we'll come back.
Yeah, we can come back to her.
Okay, Shelton?
Hello.
Hi, Shelton.
Hi, I'm Sierra Shelton. I submitted an email prior to the meeting due to last meeting's difficulty. And I appreciate that some of those things have been answered, but I still have questions about CTE courses being protected for subsequent semester enrollments for children that choose the digital learning format at the secondary level. I heard you specifically mention FCCLA today, but not FFA. The Edgenuity platform does show that there are several agricultural options. Are those options supported by the district, and do those options fulfill the obligation for an agricultural class for FFA members?
Yeah, Jared might help me with this one a little bit, but our agricultural classes here are giving students their science credits, and Edgenuity options for the ag courses are not in the area of science, and so it's not a match for the ag courses that we offer. And I know this is one of those really tough realities that for distance learning, and I know our ag teachers met and reached out to state FFA and verified that with the distance learning options we have, students would not be FFA eligible. Now that doesn't mean they couldn't show at FAIR, because Grange and 4-H are still accepting enrollments, and that would be an avenue for students who wanted to still show at FAIR. But unfortunately, after reaching out to state FFA with what we're able to do with our Edgenuity platform, students would not be able to maintain FFA.
Okay, so students would not be protected in their CTE pathways?
For the ag course, no, not FFA. No, I'm sorry.
Are there other pathways that are protected and FFA is simply not?
I don't know if maybe Kelly. Kelly's kind of one of our CTE pathway experts, and I don't know if she can answer that better than I can. I honestly don't have an answer right off the top of my head. I don't know if Demi, you want to mute Kelly to answer quickly?
While Kelly is coming on, I just want to clarify that this question relates to distance learning, the transition to the Edgenuity platform in distance learning. It does not relate to the hybrid. So
Correct.
Students who are in those CTE courses, ag and otherwise, if choosing hybrid, would be able to continue as they are.
I mean, the culinary pathway is another one where FCCLA eligibility and distance learning through Edgenuity, I don't believe is possible either. But Kelly can probably tell us a little bit more.
So your pathways have to be, your courses in your pathway need to be identified and approved as part of that pathway. And they have to be taught by a certified CTE highly qualified teacher to be in that pathway. And currently, we don't have any of those courses in Edgenuity. They're available for an extra fee, but they're not currently in our pathway in the way that we've got them identified. So I wouldn't assume that they would be pathway eligible.
Yeah, I mean, these are really some of those really hard conversations about families leaning distance learning, but the options for your students aren't what you'd like them to be.
They're not equitable, and I understand that. That's what I'm trying to find out, is how inequitable the distance learning option is as compared to the hybrid default.
Yeah.
Are there any other nuances of the distance learning inequity that you can share with me?
I think I mentioned some of them earlier, you know, the culinary, the egg we just talked about. Some of the AP classes are not available through Edgenuity. And you know, we are working on solutions for these things, but I think we don't want to tell parents in this meeting that, yeah, we're going to figure it out and don't worry about it. Because I don't want, you know, we want to make sure we're completely upfront and honest. So
Of course.
AP Euro, AP Gov, AP Stats, AP Physics, digital photo, some of those types of courses are just not available in Edgenuity and, you know, might not be available for distance learning.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, does the master schedule accommodate 100% of your secondary student body?
For everyone to come back, you mean, and just
Correct.
keep it as it is? Not based on what we saw, you know, if we have 70 to 80% of our families wanting to come back in a hybrid model, then no, the answer is no, we can't meet that distancing requirement and be able to do that.
So my follow-up question to that, Mr. Snyder, is if you can't accommodate 100% of your student body in your hybrid platform or in your proposed new distance learning platform, what you're asking us as parents to decide is which inequity we would be comfortable with in a distance learning model to accommodate the district's master schedule for hybrid return.
So I'm gonna jump in here a little bit. I think there may have been a little bit of confusion about the second or third part of your question about the ability to support 100% of our students. We do have the ability to support and educate 100% of our students, and we are in the process of identifying, or next week we will be able to identify which families are choosing which option. The challenges are around what we're able to offer similarly in one platform compared to the other platform. So 100% of the offerings in the master schedule for junior high and for high school will be offered in the hybrid model. And we're in the process of solving problems associated with the distance learning model. And the good news is, yeah, we're getting close. We're just not prepared at this moment in time to share some of the details that we are learning just as of a couple of hours ago, actually. We need to confirm some of those details, and we also need to work with our labor partners a little bit more to confirm those details. But the good news is that we have a good chunk of time between today and November 16th to confirm that information, and even earlier than that, and get that information out to families. We just don't have it today on October 1st.
Yes.
We will have it soon, and we'll get that to you. I want to affirm for everyone who's listening, and this is also being recorded for anyone who may want to listen to it later, that we are making every effort in this global pandemic to make sure that we are providing equitable education for all of our students.
My concern, Ms. Slavinsky, Dr. Slavinsky, is that right now in the current distance learning model, these children are being supported. We're switching mid-semester to a new model, and you're telling us we can't support that right now. And we'd like you to make a decision by the 8th. By the end of next week, you want my decision about what our family is going to choose, even though you're sharing that you're going to wait until you go live to have all of the intel that I should probably have to make my decision.
And we will likely have more information on Monday and Tuesday of next week as well.
Okay. So some of these questions could be resolved as soon as early next week.
Yes.
Yes, all the courses I mentioned are courses we're aware of that are issues, and we have solutions for those. So, but I don't want to say we're going to figure it out, because I think it's important to have that out there too.
I agree. Just like it's important that, yes, we are 100% of our student body right now is supported, but neither of the options that you're presenting to families to choose from by end of week, next week, would support 100% of our student body either direction. And my last question is regarding transportation clarification. If Ione is not being transported out any longer, is it just the Castle Oaks route, or is it the junior high pickup route as well being canceled?
No, we don't have all the routes finalized. That's a great question. I just used in the last town hall Castle Oaks as a potential example of a route that might be cut because it's a shorter route that's closer to school versus, you know, looking at not cutting routes out in Comanche and areas like that. So we'll have early next week the information on the routes for you so you can, because I know that some parents are going to need to make their decision based off whether or not transportation will be provided.
Absolutely. We're one of those families that, can I get my grade schoolers in Ione to school? Sure. Junior high kids? Sure. Can I get them to and from Jackson where the high school is located? That's a stretch.
Yeah, and that's why we're also, like Mr. Snyder mentioned, we're looking at those elementary times, and he mentioned 8 a.m. or even 7:45 for that elementary hybrid. One of the reasons for that they might start a little bit earlier than we're used to is that the high schools will still be starting around 8:30, and that will provide us a little bit more lead time to get some of our elementary kids to school first, so then we can get the high schoolers and things like that. There's a lot of moving parts, but the transportation team's working to figure it out.
Agreed. And then my final question in total is more related to primary educational goals. In the literature that was released by the district, at the bottom of one page, it says that parents are not allowed on campus and are invited to make meetings and digital meetings for any concerns that they may have. How is that going to look for drop off and pickup at individual sites, especially for our youngest students?
So I can speak drop off and pick up, Sean, if you want me to.
Yeah.
I mean, we're saying that in the sense of parents coming onto campus and entering into the body of the campus, not for drop off and pickup purposes, but we're not, because of the pandemic, we're not having parent volunteers in the classrooms, those types of things. And each school site is working on what drop off and pickup will look like. And we have many temperature scanners. We've purchased some automated temperature scanners, and we're doing everything we can to make the drop off quick and swift as we have to do the health screening when students arrive.
Okay, so it's not a matter of dropping off 5- and 6-year-olds at the property line and hoping for the best.
No, we have.
I have a 6-year-old of my own, and that will not be the case, I promise you.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you all very much for your additional attention. And I look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for raising those points.
Mhm.
Karen, are you on?
Hi, this is Michael.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, this is Michael Gate.
Hi, Mike.
I have a question. I'm just wondering why start this like in November, 5 weeks into the second quarter versus say midterm in January where, you know, you're between semesters.
I think that's a great question, and I'll just answer that briefly and simply. It's because that is the decision that the Board of Trustees made. And once they made that decision, we know what we need to do, and we're moving forward to implement that decision.
Okay, and then my one other question is, so for the high school cohorts, how do they get picked when you have, you know, many students that have many different classes? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a good starting point, and the way a lot of other places have done it who've started hybrids already, is, you know, you start with your alphabet, first letter of last name, but we know it doesn't always break evenly, you know, in every classroom that way. So that will likely be the starting point with some, you know, fine tuning from there. And Jared's been a secondary principal. I don't know if you have anything more to say about that, but.
No, I mean the alphabet's really got to be the starting point, and then, you know, split the kids in half based on alpha, and then, you know, look at parent requests and things like that, and potentially making changes based on family circumstances and getting as close as possible to balancing the two groups.
So will that change the order that they have currently from the distance learning that they're doing?
No, it wouldn't be a schedule change. What it would be is if, like, let's say your child has a first period English class, it's set up in a way to as closely resemble half of those students would come to first period on Monday and the other half wouldn't come until Thursday, so that all 30 students aren't in the classroom at the same time, because we can't space 30 students 6 feet apart in a classroom. It won't work.
Okay, so and then the lunch times would still stay consistent?
We're working on a couple of different ideas for lunchtime at the secondary level because of the disinfecting of the classrooms that will need to go on during lunch, which isn't typical of normal school prior to, March. And then also just, what to do with all the students on campus during that time and to keep social distancing. So our high schools are working hard on plans for that.
Okay. So will they be having the lunch in mixed locations inside and outside, or are they going to be limited to a given area, or?
It depends on the school site, but the more outside we can do, the better. Obviously, in bad weather, we have to have plans for that. But being a former high school principal, if there's the slightest bit of sun rays, students prefer to eat outside anyway. I worked at Amador for years, and we couldn't even get them to eat in the cafeteria on a rainy day. So we'll do our best, spread them out using the outdoors as much as possible.
Oh, one quick thing, and I'm done, is just, does anybody have a definition of what grab and go lunch is?
Mostly sack lunch. And it will look very similar to lunches now. If you've had the opportunity, we have 5 school sites and a couple other locations where we're delivering meals throughout the county. This would also be a good opportunity to say, based on the pandemic and the current circumstances, the state extended what they had in place in the springtime, and that is all students eat for free from now until the end of the calendar year. So up until winter break, meals are free. And so you can tomorrow, if you wanted to, show up at one of those locations and pick up a meal for your student. And that will be the case from November till the end of December in hybrid, where any student on campus who wants a secondary student who wants lunch will be able to have lunch for free.
That's a good reminder, Garrett. I really appreciate you bringing that up. We'll send out another reminder notification on that, so all of our families are aware of that.
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to cut you off. Thank you so much for your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Dave Nicholson. Could you just go through some of the reasons why students couldn't stick with distance learning in their existing classrooms, say using live streaming?
Hey, Dave, that's a great question. I don't know if Dave Vicari, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, wants to talk about that. I think Demi's going to unmute him here.
Sage.
There we go. Oh, you had it, and now it's gone again. Try again.
Okay, great. That's a great question. Yes, live streaming is definitely something that we are discussing with our labor partners right now. There are various options for that, and that is definitely, like I said, an option that would enhance the learning. So we are working on that with our labor partners and hope to have that resolved in, like everything else, in the next week or so. So thank you, and we will definitely let everybody know about the camera option.
Dave,
Yes, but if you could let us know what some of the constraints are in making that happen. I'm sure there are other constraints too, maybe in terms of the one-on-one students get with teachers.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we are definitely exploring that option, and certainly for some of those courses we were talking about earlier, it would be a huge help. So, we're actively working on that, and we'll see where we land ultimately.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I have a couple of questions. The first is, Dr. Slavinsky had mentioned that there were considerations for October 19th start for those who might have also be considered for some mental health issues, but I'm trying to understand how you've actually figured out who that was, since I have never been asked about my students' mental health and well-being, and have not been contacted at all regarding that. And then the second question is regarding why I was told that students are not required to have their cameras on, and where the accountability is for a student and a teacher when the teachers can't tell what they're doing.
So I'd like to answer the first question, and Sean, maybe you take the second one. With the first question regarding, I just lost it. I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Tell me the question again.
It's regarding your statement that children who may be experiencing some mental and emotional issues because of the requirement of our children not being allowed to return to a public school. And I've never even been so much as contacted about the health and welfare of my children's mental state.
Right. Thank you so much. So in other words, how are our individual schools going about identifying who these individual students or groups of students are going to be to come back on October 19th for those small learning cohorts? And so the parents, the teachers and the principals are working together to identify, based upon the data that they have and what they know and have learned about the students from spring moving into the new school year. And with that, I would say, as a parent, and I'm a parent too, I know that our kids sometimes behave and act and show their emotions and their feelings and their wellness differently at home than they do at school. I know that well. That's how it was with my children. And so if you have if you have children that you're concerned about in those areas, and you want to kind of check to see if your children could be included in that opportunity beginning in October, I would encourage you to call and speak with either one of your child's teachers or to the school principal about that.
And I can talk a little more about that, just a couple other pieces. So every one of our school sites does have a counselor assigned to them, and they have had active, Google Classrooms for kids to sign up for counselor appointments ever since March, and have been doing outreach for students. So just the question about how those students have been identified, it would be our counselors have a list, who they've really been engaging with and very active with. And so those would be students who they've already identified. But yes, just like Amy just said, if you were concerned for your children, certainly reach out to your school.
No, and I appreciate that. I guess my question was more along the lines of, first of all, my daughter is just now going to Jackson Junior High, and I had to call her teacher and set up an appointment, even just to figure out why my daughter was having such difficulty. And no one's contacted me about that, like I said, but in the same breath, you can't know anything about my daughter because they've never met my daughter. So I don't know. Again, I'll reach out because I do have a concern. So I appreciate now that that's being offered as us to reach out, because that wasn't clear previously between the board meeting and other than this is the first time I'm hearing it today.
Okay. One of the benefits for Jackson is that the same counselor serves Jackson Elementary and Jackson Junior High. And so
she went to Pine Grove. She was a STEM student.
Oh, I see. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So, which is fine. That's fine. Now that I know it's an option, it's just never been communicated in any of the other emails I've ever seen. And I mean, and again, we've seen, hundreds. So who knows? I may have missed that.
No, I think that's a really good point. And if at any point you see me looking down and multitasking, it's because I'm taking notes on this meeting. I'm jotting down many, if not all, of the questions that you all are asking so that we can add it to our FAQ that goes out to everyone early next week, so that everyone, all of our families, can benefit from this information.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the other one is the camera question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'll just touch on that quickly. That has been just a real hot topic and controversial topic nationwide through distance learning. Cameras on, cameras off. Do you require them on? What's the protocol or process for that? And so we kind of took the stance of leaving that accountability piece in the hands of our teachers and principals, and to determine whether or not students are engaging, are they completing the assignments. Really, with distance learning, the ultimate measure of attendance and what's going on is a combination of participation of the live interactions as well as completing the assignments. And so, we've kind of taken the stance not to mandate that all cameras be on, but leaving that in the hands of the teachers and our site principals. So.
Okay, because the teacher specifically told me that Jackson Junior High teachers were told they were not allowed to ask the children to have cameras on. And in a class in which my daughter was failing, and again, I didn't sit in on the classrooms because I don't sit in on them when you guys are in the actual classroom. I didn't realize I needed to. And when I talked to the specific teacher, she specifically stated, we have been told we are not allowed to ask our students to turn on their cameras. And I don't understand that because I know other districts are doing that. And then again, back to the point, how do you bond with students on distance learning when you have a classroom full of PE who's all not online? You can't even see what they're doing. And again, I'm lucky enough. I'm at home, I'm in my children's business, but it took me 6 weeks to find out that my child wasn't on camera. That's not acceptable.
So I'll just say that is not something that we have said needs to be a rule. So I would encourage you to follow up with the principal at the school if you are continuing to have concerns about that.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was all.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Donna Hirschfeld. And boy, man, it's a typical thing. I want to answer that previous person's questions. And such me. If there's anybody that needs to reach out at Ione Junior, we're trying really hard on social emotional every single Wednesday in our tutorial classes and every class. So if you feel like you're not getting a reach out, please let us know. But now to my thing. I had my hand up earlier and then I took it down because I'm kind of emotional. I've had to start telling my kids that I'm not going to be their teacher and their science teacher at Ione Junior. And I'm hoping maybe I can do Edgenuity with students, but that's still not the same. That's not me teaching science, and anybody that's had me teaching science knows that's for sure true. But I know that's not the critical thing, but I guess it gets to another question, and I have to ask Amy, can you clarify to me how you know how many teachers are coming back? Because I have only been asked obtusely twice, once by my principal, and this was a couple months ago, and then by the union saying, am I comfortable going back? And I think it was 50-something% that said they don't feel safe coming back. And I know, and I spoke with Dave, or I sent a message to Dave today to make it clear that I can't go back. And then coincidentally, we had a leadership meeting at our school, and we thought that, I heard that it would be something like 10% of the teachers would need to do distance learning. Well, without violating HIPAA, I've already heard from 5 teachers at my school that are not really safely in a position to go back. And nobody has asked us to start talking about our medical conditions or anything yet. But I'm wondering how you can be so confident that these kids going back to hybrid are not going to have subs. Because I'm trying to do the math. Again, that's what I always get back to, the science and the math. And I just don't see how it works.
Yeah, Donna, those are really good questions. I'll make a few comments, and I see Dave over there wanting to make a few comments also. And Donna is one of our most awesome junior high teachers at Ione Junior High, for those of you in the meeting who don't know her. And she does a fantastic job. I always love visiting her classroom. And so I take the questions very seriously. And for those who may not be public school educators who are in this meeting, who may not know that anything related to a teacher's working conditions, a change in working conditions, must be negotiated at the negotiations table with our labor leaders and our labor partners. So oftentimes you're going to hear us answer questions that sound really ambiguous, and that may seem really unfair. That's because we are in the process making really good progress with our Amador County Teachers Association labor partners around those very questions. And we are expecting to wrap that up soon. and be able to share more information and be able to answer those very specific questions that you're asking, Donna. So at this moment in time, it's not scientific the way that you and I would like it. But as soon as we finish the negotiations process, which should happen very quickly here soon because we've made good progress, then we'll be able to communicate out with each individual teacher and individually, privately, so that we're not violating any HIPAA or FERPA laws, and be able to make those judgments and those staffing decisions for all of our schools in time for the start in the middle of November. Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you pretty much said it all, but that is correct, Donna. Staffing's our #1 priority right now, and we were at the table yesterday. We have another meeting on Monday, and we are trying our best to determine how that is going to look, and we will communicate that to everybody just as soon as possible, because you're not alone. Everybody wants to know and have the answer to that question. So I just want you to know we're working very hard on it and considering everyone's requests.
And more than that, more than my request, and I mean, I've thought about, of course, trying to engineer a plexiglass bubble for me to be in to do this. And of course, when kids go back to hybrid, it's not going to be the same situation. I still can't have them. I've been telling them, wait, we're going to not do chemical reactions till we're in class. They're still not going to be able to do that. And I just feel so fearful that because we have rushed into this, people are going to go back to hybrid, and it's not going to be satisfying to anyone because it's not going to be the experience that they thought it was going to be. And I know it won't be, well, who knows, maybe they'll get an awesome sub. And maybe they can figure out how to clean 500 beakers a day. But I feel, and I know you have done your best to explain it to parents, but I think it's really important for them to understand the reality of what will be going on in there. And it is not going to be class as we know it.
That's correct. You're right.
I'm done, maybe forever. You may never have to hear from me again because I may not be around much longer.
We don't want that to happen, Donna.
No.
Hi, this is Amanda Robinson. First, I just want, and I'm with, I have kids in Jackson Elementary, and I just want to say they have done an amazing job at distance learning. For what it's worth, it's been amazing. My question is if my kids do the hybrid, I know that there is, and I may be wrong in saying this, but state mandates to the amount of time they're supposed to have schooling. I believe I do have a kindergartner. For kindergarten, it's supposed to be 3 hours. So if they're getting 2.5 hours a day, what could I expect that to look like? I'm kind of concerned with sending my child to school 2.5 hours and coming home and then having to hop onto the computer and then doing an extra assignment. Would that look like more in the form of homework assignments sent home? Also, I have a 3rd grader. I think their requirement's about 4 hours. So again, would that look like assignments coming home, not them going to school and then having to come home and hop online? And also with the day, they're not going to go on Wednesday. Would that look like an online class or, again, packet work?
So Sean, before you jump in and start to answer that, Demi, could you put up the elementary hybrid schedule model again? And then Sean, maybe you could walk through that one more time as you're answering the question.
Sure. So just first and foremost, the answer is yes, it will be a combination of what they call, the live in-person instruction, which is referred to as synchronous. And then there will be an asynchronous component even in the in-person hybrid model, because you're right, it's 180 minutes for kindergartners and it's 240 for grades, I think 3 through 12. So, our schedules don't meet that for just the in-person portion. So I honestly think it could be a combination of both. I'm sure there will be some take-home packets and paper pencil stuff, but one of our requirements to the state in designing any learning model is that we can immediately shift back and forth between them. Like for the example I gave where a student in a classroom tests positive and that whole class has to go home for 14 days to quarantine, we have to be able to bounce into distance learning for 14 days pretty seamlessly So, you know, I'm just thinking off my head, the top of my head here, there'll probably be some take-home paper pencil packets, and it may be some form of electronic things as well. And it could vary by school site too, I think, or even by teacher. So, but it will be a combination of the in-person as well as the asynchronous or at-home stuff to complete to make that total of 240 or 180 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being patient and for the good question.
Hello, this is Sarah Swift. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, hi Sarah, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry, I couldn't figure out my earbuds. I'm a teacher in Calaveras, 18 years, and so I have a teacher's perspective on this, as my school board decided that we were going to go back with about 5 days of preparation. So we are all in a pickle over here trying to figure it out. But I also have a daughter that is in 8th grade at Jackson Junior who's immune compromised and will definitely be doing 100% distance learning. No doubt about it for now. My question was, I spent some time looking at Edgenuity and kind of working my way around that. And I kind of see it as kind of like a basic cable package as far as what you pay for. And there are a lot of electives and options that might lie outside of what the district is paying for providing. And I'm wondering, as a parent, if we have, you know, the opportunity and the luxury of being able to pick other classes as electives that we pay for, is that something where there will be flexibility? So for example, my daughter is in honors English. Obviously she won't have that distance learning. Could she take like a 9th grade creative writing course instead of just doing basic 8th grade English?
That's a great question. I was following you, and I was about to respond by saying, yes, we are looking at purchasing additional options in Edgenuity that we don't currently subscribe to match some of those electives and things like that. The scenario you provided, I honestly don't have an answer to. I don't want to give you an answer that I'm not certain of. You know, I can say we would want to work with all families to meet each student's needs, but I also don't want to overpromise and not be able to deliver on that. I don't know if anyone else of my cabinet members has any comments about that specific scenario.
Well, Sean, I appreciate the fact that you pointed out that we are looking at other courses within the package that we might be able to add and bring to the board for course approval. That is definitely on our list of things that we're working on. I also heard her ask about the possibility of parents paying for additional courses. And I think because we're a public school system and required and wanting to offer a free and appropriate public education for all of our students, we would not ever require our parents to pay for something. And we would need to do a little bit of research as to whether or not it would be acceptable for parents to pay for courses.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. There are culinary arts and vet medicine and a lot of really great things on there. So for our kids who are having to take this option, you know, it's a little bit more alluring when we tell them that they can't go back and see their friends, you know, which is tough. I also just wanted to make a quick comment on that. Thank you for answering that. I heard one of the moms talking about how their teacher was not able to see their child on a Google Meet. And just from the teacher side of this, as of mid-September, we could only see 16 students on Google Meet at a time. Starting mid-September, they changed, and now we can see, you know, 40 or 50. But up until that time, we had no choice of seeing our whole class, which was a huge drawback to doing this. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there, because I think a lot of the times, you know, we say, why aren't teachers doing this? But, you know, there are bandwidth issues, there is privacy issues, there are, you know, just having a meet going while you have kids in the room issues. So there, from a teacher perspective, there are a lot. And my last comment, and I think this is an important one, I just heard that when they went through all of our subs in Calaveras Unified to see who would come back and sub for us, they came up with two subs who were willing to come sub. And one of those has now been picked up in a long-term sub position. So when we talk about ourselves or our children or whatever starting to get sick or needing to stay home, that's just one of the realities that I think we all have to be really honest about. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for that teacher's perspective too, Sarah. I think Dave wants to comment quick.
Well, I just wanted to let you guys know the scenario over here. On October 7th, we're taking to the board a temporary substitute certificated substitute pay increase. So we will be increasing our substitute pay from $110 a day to $175 a day. And for long-term subs, $200 a day. And that's temporary through the COVID-19 pandemic, and it will be paid for through our CARES Act funds. We have 70 plus substitutes in our pool, and we too had a lot of our subs not wanting to come back, mainly because of the financial part of it, and the risk. So we feel, and this is a survey we had done with them, that by increasing the daily rate, we are going to get a lot in return, and that's what it's looking like. So working with my department, working with Sean's Ed Services department, we are providing training, both distance learning and hybrid training for our substitutes, so they will be ready to come into a class when the teacher is absent and take over from there. So we feel like we have things going in the right direction right now.
Hi, this is Hillary O'Neill. I've got a kiddo in Ione Junior High. Y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah, hi, Hillary.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to, I missed the first couple of minutes, so I may have missed an announcement earlier. Are the junior high students also going to be use Edgenuity?
Yes, for the distance learning option, yes.
Okay. And just kind of wondering what the transition would look like between, the current classes that he's taking, the grades that he's made so far, and for some of those classes that don't cross over, if they end up having to go back to a distance learning model altogether, due to a change in our status in the county. I just kind of wondered if, like, the classes that he's taking now, would that all come back? Would Edgenuity be passed out to everybody? Just kind of wondering what the backtrack would look like if that had to happen.
Yeah, I'll talk about the part about an entire school needing to go back to distance learning or the conditions in our county. The guidance from the state has said that once your county leaves the purple tier and you've been there for more than 14 days, you're eligible to open for in-person instruction in a hybrid model. So, and then once you actually kick off your school year or launch your school year, then there is no more, if your county goes back to purple, your whole district goes back to purple. You operate based on the criteria laid out as far as, like, if a student tests positive in a classroom, then that classroom goes home for 14 days to quarantine, but the rest of the school stays open. So it's really all about, once you launch your school year, there is no more going back to distance learning for the whole district. So that just takes care of the last question there. And as far as the mid-semester course changes, maybe for classes that don't quite align with Edgenuity, those are going to be some challenging decisions. But I know Jared talked a little earlier about some grade transfers and things like that, and how that can be accommodated and accomplished. But it's not going to be perfect, and those are the situations that we're still looking at and working out with what's currently being offered and what Edgenuity offers. I don't know if anyone wants to say any more. That probably wasn't a very solid answer, but
Okay. I guess that mostly answers my question. We'll just have to hold our breath and see what happens.
We're looking for Edgenuity matches, or a close match, maybe not even exact, but a close. And it's a little easier at the junior high level because you're not talking high school credits, right? So if there's a match even in the ballpark of a course at the junior high level, we'll find an Edgenuity match and do a transfer of that grade to finish out the rest of the semester in that course, and make it as seamless as possible. And we are actively working to make that happen. So.
Okay. Would it work a little bit like, we had a kiddo at Mountain Oaks, our oldest, and like the mentor teacher model, is that a little bit what it'll look like for the distance learning?
Possibly there will be a teacher assigned, to facilitate distance learning, and then yeah, they'll help manage the Edgenuity platform, do the daily live interaction where every morning they'll meet with the class and the peers and facilitate that, and then the teacher would be there to support them with the various classes they're enrolled in Edgenuity. Really the instruction comes through the Edgenuity program, but the teacher's role is to really support that and help proctor any quizzes, things like that, and just be there as a support for the students.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good questions.
Sophia, are you on?
Oh, yes. My name is Christy. I believe my daughter is, I'm logged into my daughter's Google Classroom account. I'm giving her bad data. My question is about a timeline, because I know a lot of these questions have been asked and we don't have the answers yet. But when will we know? Like, I have children at Ione Junior and one at Amador High. When will we know that teachers are returning, or how many teachers are returning? When will that information exist?
Well, we talked about that briefly a little bit ago, but we are in the process of identifying staffing now and staffing needs. So we hope to have that information next week. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, and then the same question for, someone brought up the live stream. That seems to me like a great idea. Is that something that we would also, is that actually on the table, or is that not on the table?
Yeah, we're in discussions around that. Yes.
Okay, so is that also a next week thing, or that's not so much?
I can't say that would be a next week thing.
Okay, and then my final question is with regard to the secondary. I know that it's broken up by alphabet, but that you're also saying that there could be flexibility based on families' work schedules, et cetera. Is that something that will be in the pack when we sign up for whatever we sign up for? Is that going to be an option, or is that something we have to specifically reach out about? How does that work?
So for the hybrid model as the default, there won't be a sign up form or an enrollment form or anything that goes home. Like if you're that's the default for all kids. So school sites will be, I guess the best way to do that would be to be in communication with the school site or a counselor, and we will try to accommodate families wherever possible.
Okay, because I'm just getting at, like, if it's alphabet, obviously my kids have the same last name, but it's the exact opposite of our work schedules. It's like they would be in the Monday, Tuesday, and it's the exact opposite of the Thursday, Friday. If they could be in the Monday, Tuesday, it completely works with our whole family life, and it doesn't in the opposite. Is that something that can be dealt with?
Well, we will try. I don't want to promise or guarantee that we'll be able to accommodate every family, but our goal is to work and support all families in helping, what works for them. So.
Just adding on a little bit of that to Sean, I know that our principals are working very closely together as well. So, for example, the principal at Ione Elementary and the principal at Ione Junior are working together to try to align programs or schedules for families. It may be possible in some cases, that may not be possible in other cases, just to the size of the campuses and the various other complexities that are involved. But in conversations that I've had with those two principals, for example, I know that they are working very hard to make that happen, because we know how difficult this can be for families.
So is that something I would reach out to the principals about?
You could, sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have a child in Jackson Elementary, and I was wondering, we use Little Oak, the casino daycare, currently, and I was wondering if they would be a suitable bus stop like they used to be that goes to the general store.
I'll take that question. I cannot speak to the specific stop, but I was informed by Demi today that the Rancheria has reached out about specific needs to try to assist us with transportation. So we're going to do everything we can to try to make as many stops as we can as normal, and have that information for you next week before you have to make your decision.
Okay. And then my other question is how is the music program going to be working? Because currently we've, and not that I have an issue with it, we're having, girls playing basketball and running around, and we have all these kind of sports going, but we can't blow in a clarinet in fear of getting COVID right now. Isn't there a 6-foot, keeping people away and still giving kids the option to have other pieces besides just sports?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So I worked with our band teachers and Dr. Kerr, and she has approved band to do conditioning similar to what athletics is able to do, which includes just percussion without sharing any equipment. She's not approving any brass or wind instruments at this time or any playing of those, but she approved them, for example, like marching in a parade. You can get together and practice those types of things similar to the conditioning that the athletic teams are doing. So that is what's been approved at this point, and I just had some more communication about that today.
And is that going to only be for people who are using the hybrid models?
Well, in any in-person playing of instruments is not allowable at this time, and I guess that includes the choir as well. She was dictating. So whether they're hybrid or distance learning, if they're coming together for those types of things, they're not able to play the instruments. I mean, they could still play it at home in front of a computer screen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa, are you on? Hello, Teresa? Michelle, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I have two questions. Will the kids with IEPs still have support with the distance learning if we continue to do with that? That was my first question. And then my second question is, if we do stay on distance learning at this time, why it's the hybrid mode, if school opens back up fully, are we able to switch?
I'll answer the second question while Catherine Brown, our special education director, gets her microphone unmuted. So yes, we did put in, if we are allowed to reopen with no restrictions and have 100% of students come back, then yes, we would open back up, and families who selected distance learning would be able to come back it wouldn't even be a hybrid model at that point because there wouldn't be any restrictions. So and Catherine, did you want to take the question about the special education students continuing support? She's still muted. That's all right.
Can you unmute her? Thank you.
The answer is yes, they will still continue to receive report. I don't, Catherine can provide additional details, but if you select distance learning, yes, our students will, continue to receive that support.
So yes, as Sean said, students that have that choose distance learning will continue to have special education supports to accommodate and help them with their distance learning. And I apologize for the cat meowing.
Okay, sorry, I was muted and I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you for those answers. And then I have one more brief question. I have a high schooler in Sutter Creek, a junior high schooler in Jackson, and then 2 in elementary in Pine Grove. My problem is if I do decide to do the hybrid model, I need to know about transportation. I do not drive due to disability.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that many of our families are in a situation like yours. And so, yeah, in an area like Pine Grove, we're going to do everything we can to make transportation as normal as it has been in the past. And we'll have the specifics for you next week.
Okay, but my understanding is since like I'm pretty sure accommodations will probably be made for my ones in Sutter Creek and my Jackson Junior Higher, but since I am close to Pine Grove Elementary, is there anything I can do?
Well, Pine Grove is going to be looked at similarly to Pioneer. I mean, proximity is not just the only criteria for eliminating a route. It's also safety. And with our two upcountry schools being right on Highway 88, there's not a whole lot of safe walking routes to either one of those schools. So we're going to do everything we can to not abandon those routes in those areas, because it's just, we don't want kids walking up and down Highway 88.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you.
Teresa, are you back on now? Teresa?
I can't hear you.
Okay.
It says you're unmuted. I don't know what.
It doesn't show she's muted, but we're not hearing her for whatever reason.
Teresa, is your microphone on?
Or volume? She might need to turn up her volume. I've had that problem.
We'll try again after the next speaker. Kendra, are you available?
Yes, I am. Thank you. My question is in regards to the distance learning, the Edgenuity program. I have two elementary school kids at Sutter Creek. And one of the reasons why I feel like they've been thriving so much with this distance learning is the take-home packets and the actual handwriting of assignments and the teacher feedback in that manner. And I was wondering, with this Edgenuity program, will there be packets like that with handwriting, or is it all going to be kind of digital in the manner that it was during the distance learning in the springtime?
So the elementary distance learning platform will not be Edgenuity. If you only have elementary students, that model will be pretty similar to what they're getting right now, where the teachers will be assigned, and it shouldn't really look a whole lot different than it does right now. Do you just have elementary?
Yes.
Okay, then yes, the Edgenuity is only for secondary students, junior high and high school. So
Okay, so there would be like packets that I would kind of pick up and drop off, kind of the way that it has been.
I would think so. There may be a new teacher. Your children may be assigned a new teacher if you opt for the distance learning. And so I can't guarantee that the new teacher would do it exactly the same way that the current teacher is doing it. But I know most or all of our teachers are using a combination of take-home packets and drop off and pick up, in addition to some of the online stuff. So I would expect it to look very similar to the way it does now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for this meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Teresa is the last speaker. We'll try one more time. Teresa, is your microphone working? Okay, if anyone would like to email their questions, I'll send my email address out right now via the chat.
Okay, great. Yeah, we had a few people do that after the last meeting who didn't have a chance to get in, and we'd be happy to answer questions via email. So Amy, did you want to wrap it up or close?
I'd be happy to do that. I want to say thank you and kudos to our team here who's done an excellent job of answering questions, and to Demi Wright, who's behind the scenes facilitating our Zoom meeting this evening. And thanks to all of you who took time to be here, to listen, to ask great questions and spend time with us. And please watch for more information to come. I've been typing and taking notes, and we'll be adding more info to the FAQ that you got earlier. So watch for more information. Please be safe and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.